Another thing I've seen in a lot of men's groups in the world today is these cathartic circles, sharing emotions and being held in the emotional experience that most men don't get a chance to, which is beautiful. It's an important part of men's work. But to me, that's just the beginning. Just beginning to open up to explore what's going on inside of ourselves, that's only step one. What do we do on the other side of the emotional experience? How do we face off with the problems we have in our lives? Because if you only sit around and talk about your problems, then we're going back to talk therapy. 12 years ago, I sat in my first men's team circle. Now, mind you, I'd sat in a number of different men's groups, men organized activities and events, but this was different. I didn't know exactly what I was getting myself into, but I was welcomed there by an older man that I really trusted at the time. And he said, I think you'd get a lot out of this thing we call men's team. Why don't you come and sit in as a guest? So I agreed to. I was 25 years old and I was enjoying life and I was just taking everything in. So I went and I sat at this meeting. And after going through some opening procedures and protocols, 30 minutes in, there was a heated exercise that we were going through. And there was a man who was on the hot seat. And that man was getting all charged up and defensive. And I could feel the energy and I could feel it myself because my body was looking for the quickest place to escape. And in one moment, I saw a man outside of that circle come in and he challenged the man. He came right at him and I swear I thought they were going to throw blows with each other. My instincts were getting ready for something to go down. But they stuck it out. And within 10 minutes, both of those men were in tears and embracing. It was something I'd never seen before. I'd sat in many men's circles for many years before this, but this was the first time I felt that deep, genuine care from one man to another. The willingness of one man to push the other guy so far that there was so much trust there that they ended up embracing at the end of it. I'd never seen that before. And as I was driving on the way home with the man who had brought me to this meeting, I said to him, what the hell was that? What was going on? I was trying to understand it and he was laughing, trying to help me understand and trying to explain to me what that was. And he said, you see, that's the difference between a men's group and a men's team. And even though I heard that wisdom from him that day, it still took me many more years to really appreciate the difference between a group and a team. My name is Jeddy Azuma. I'm the founder of the Rising Man movement. And in this episode, we're going to talk about the different modalities that there are to help men grow, like therapy and coaching, men's groups and men's teams, and especially making that strong distinction to why we focus on creating men's teams and not men's groups in the world here in Rising Man. If you did a search on Google, you would find that one of the number one things that men are struggling with these days is feeling alone. There's very few men in the world who can identify a best friend, someone they can really count on in the world. There's plenty of scientific studies that have proven this to be true. Men are also struggling not just with loneliness, but also feeling crippled by the fear of failure. And there's a number of modalities that are starting to emerge, and the conversation around men's mental health has really amplified over the last 10 years, to the point where men are actively seeking therapists and coaches and counselors to help them. Now, mind you, I think therapy is a wonderful modality. Sitting down with somebody who's willing to help you go to some of those deeper parts of yourself you don't ordinarily talk about. It's a great place to start, to begin looking under those stones that only live inside of you. It's an important thing for us to do as men. But the problem that I find with therapy is that at some point it becomes talking about the past and reviewing the way that things are, but not really moving towards action. So there's some men who will hire a mentor or a coach, somebody who's tuned into not just the backstory you have as a man, but what you need to do to take action steps forward, how to actually transform and change. And I've helped men in this capacity on a one-to-one basis. I think it's a wonderful way to grow and to keep stepping forward in your life. But even coaching has its limitations. Now, there's a difference when I put myself in a room, in a circle with other men who are going through the same things that I'm going through, men who can relate to my experience. In Rising Man, we say that the first thing that a man needs in his life is to know that he's not unique. And we focus on that at the very beginning of your journey in Rising Man. We remind you that you're not unique, that your problems are shared by many other men. The things that you think make you broken, unfixable, hopeless are exactly the same things other men are trying to navigate through. And there's something about that solidarity in that experience, the shared experience of knowing I'm not alone in that can clear the fog and help you see a way through. Some men's groups focus on that. Some men's teams focus on that. That's the most important thing that you have to do in the beginning of your journey. And when you're sitting in a chair in a therapist's office, or you're just working one-on-one with a coach, you may be able to relate to that individual. But when there's 5, 6, 7, 20, 100 other men looking back at you, mirroring the experience, it's more powerful. It lasts. So being around a community of men, a circle of men, has an obvious advantage over just those one-to-one exchanges with therapists and counselors. But what's the difference between a group and a team? Going back to that story that I started off with in the beginning, what did that mentor of mine mean when he said, this is what a men's team is? This is the difference between a group and a team. Well, the way we hold it is that a men's group, or any group in general, is a loose collection of people who aren't committed to the same thing. In groups, you may often see people come and go as they please. There's no commitments. There's no standards. There's no baseline agreements or identity that forces those men to become one unit. In professional sports, there's not professional baseball groups. There's teams. Because if any one of the members of that team were missing, the team would suffer. The team would be at half-mast. They'd be less powerful and less potent. You see, on a team, you have to prioritize togetherness and unity. We're fighting for the same thing. We have a shared identity. We have a shared code. We have agreements and commitments that bind us together. And we practice holding those standards high, like we spoke about previously. On a group, you often don't have those types of restrictions. You don't have those commitments for one reason or another, oftentimes because it's uncomfortable. You see, depending on how you look at it, one of the things about being on a team is that it's really hard. It should be hard. It should be hard. The bar should be high, because that's how we yield the best results. We only grow and transform and change under challenging circumstances and conditions. So if I'm a part of a loose collection of people who doesn't really have any agreements or standards, where I can come and go as I please, where we can bend the rules so that we squeeze inside of the box instead of holding some rigid parameters that make us great, then I can choose that. But the results of that are going to show up in my life. The ripples of being loose, being flexible, changing the rules of the game as we go is going to be how I live my life. It's not a very trustworthy man. On a team where we set those parameters, those standards are laid down in advance. We know what the expectations are. We know what's enough and what's not. And we practice showing up to them and raising the bar over and over and over again. That's what molds strong relationships. That's what builds strong, confident, trustworthy men, not just on a team, but out there in the world. Yeah, there's some difficult parts of being on a men's team. The expectations are high. I've been around long enough to see that not a lot of men stick around for the long term. Some guys will step onto a men's team and realize that they're in a different environment. It's like a gladiator's arena. We challenge each other. We swing our swords. We prepare each other for life. And because life is challenging enough as it is, some men think that, last thing I want to do is go and be challenged by a bunch of other guys again. The body, the brain, the ego resists being in uncomfortable situations. So sticking it out on a men's team may not be for everybody. And as much as I would love for every man to have that in his life, it may not be for you. But the benefits of sticking it out. I've been a part of a men's team now for going on 13 years. I've been in a relationship with men for 13 years, week in and week out. Men who know me better than anyone else on this planet, who would have my back in the snap of a finger, who have showed up for me, who I've shown up for in the hardest, darkest moments of our lives. That's a resource you can't put a price on. But it's also something that you can't just show up for and expect it to be there. Being on a team and building these types of relationships requires commitment, determination, dedication. shared value, shared vision. And not all men want that in their lives. The benefit of a men's group is that you can sign up for a little while and then maybe you can leave. You can go and you can come. And that may be exactly what you need in your life right now. But if you really want to learn how to commit at a higher level, if you want to be held accountable in a way that most other people in your life won't, then a men's team and the culture around a men's team is the way to do it. The guys I see who don't stick around on a men's team, they're still in a place and season in life where it's about them. It's about me. What's in it for me? What am I getting out of this? What can I learn? What can I get from being here? That's not what a team is about. On a team, we prioritize how can I show up for the men around me? How can I take care of the man to my left and the man to my right? And if every member on the team is looking out for the man to his left and right and across from him, then we're all covered multiple times over. But as soon as everyone shows up into the space and is looking down at how can I benefit from this, then you don't have a team anymore. And for some men, maybe that's exactly what you want. You want to be able to come in and come out and go as you please. That might be the season of life you're in. That might mean you're not ready for a men's team. But the benefit of sticking it out with a team and sticking it out for the long term is that slow burn. Those results that you can only get by being part of something and committing over and over and over again, showing up over and over and over again. Some of the most resilient, trustworthy, dependable men that I've ever seen in my life, and I've been around thousands of different types of men, are the ones who have a core team of men that they keep practicing with each other. They don't lose their edge as they grow older. They don't lose their edge and soften their standards as time goes on. They raise them. They make that edge sharper. That's the benefit of being on a team for the long run. Another thing I've seen in a lot of men's groups in the world today is these cathartic circles, sharing emotions and being held in the emotional experience that most men don't get a chance to, which is beautiful. It's an important part of men's work. But to me, that's just the beginning. Just beginning to open up to explore what's going on inside of ourselves, that's only step one. What do we do on the other side of the emotional experience? How do we face off with the problems we have in our lives? Because if you only sit around and talk about your problems, then we're going back to talk therapy. We're in group therapy. Men's team is not therapy. This is about identification and solution. On a team, we don't get caught up in the problems. We only talk about them enough to assess and diagnose what's going on. Then we move into solution. We move into action because that's the only thing that's going to actually change it. You see, if we keep showing up week in and week out, just talking about the same things over and over again, it gets exhausting. Men start to lose interest. They start to flake away. On a team, it's not just talking about what's going wrong. It's making sure we end that conversation with, here's what I'm going to do about it. Here's what I can do about it. And the thing is if you're out there in the world by yourself, this is a really hard conversation to have in your own head. And even if you can have that conversation, which is very difficult, can you move that towards action independent of yourself? This is where most men fail and why most men are struggling with adversity, why they feel lonely and alone is because you don't have the courage and confidence to talk about what's going on inside. But unless you take that towards action and strategy and solution, then nothing's going to change anyway. You'll just keep showing up week in and week out, talking about the same old things until the end of time. Doing the same thing over again, hoping that it's going to change, instead of seizing the responsibility and doing something about it. That's being on a team. One of the big misconceptions about men's team is that it's all hard, it's all rigid, it's all rugged and rough and gruff. That's a part of it, right? We bring an edge to a men's team that you won't get anywhere else in your life. But being on a team is also hilarious. It's also fun. Some of the biggest laughs I've ever had in my life have been at men's team meetings and men's team events, because there's a depth and range we can access with each other when we have deep wells of trust. It's one of the things we mentioned in Way of the Rising Man, being able to infuse humor into life's greatest challenges. It's not a men's team if you're not laughing. It's not a men's team if there's not laughs and humor and jokes that are woven into some of the deep, heavy, hard work that we do. So it's important to know that it is hard, it is challenging, it's edgy, but it's also hilarious and fun. Laughter has to be a part of being on a team. And if it's not, then you've got something else, but I wouldn't call it a team. So if this sounds like something that you need in your life, if you want to have the standards go up and be around other men who will challenge you and that you can challenge yourself, go to risingman.org, book a call with us so we can help you learn how to be a part of a team inside of our community today. And make sure you tune in next week for episode 4 of the first series here on the podcast, where you'll get to meet the other members of the Rising Man High Council. What's the High Council? These are the core members that are responsible for the leadership and direction of the entire multinational Rising Man organization. So make sure you tune in to hear us talk more about our legacy, about our culture, and how you can become a part of what we're up to.